Hello guys and welcome again to my channel. So in the past episode, we have talked about the diluted earnings per share and earnings per share. So in this particular video, in this particular episode, we're gonna talk about book value per share. So book value per share is in the form of like this. Like for example, 100 pesos per share. So what does it mean? It means, as you can see here, we have shareholders equity components and the total shareholders equity is 2,750,000. Okay? So, the meaning of book value per share is as if the question is, what is your book value per ordinary share? It means how much is your share on the shareholders' equity if you have only one share. Okay? So, for example, um, there is a company, BBG company for example, and this is the shareholders' equity of BBG company. And you have one share of ordinary share of BBG company. So how much will be yours in this 2,750,000 shareholders equity? So that's the meaning of the book value per share. Okay? So again, the meaning of book value per share is how much is your share in the shareholders equity if you have one ordinary share. If we're talking about book value per ordinary share. Sometimes the question is, how much is the book value per preference share? If that will be the case, the it's still the same. How much is your share with this one if you have one preference share? So this is very much different from earnings per share because in the earnings per share, if you can still remember it's directly related to the net income. So if you have one ordinary share, how much will be your share on the net income of the company? That's earnings per share. Here, again, the subject is the shareholders' equity. Okay? The question is, how are you going to compute the book value per share? So first, since we have this problem, in order to save time, you can already see that there are two types of shares. We have ordinary shares and we have preference shares. Okay? So the very first step that you should do is get the total shareholders' equity, and then the second step would be to divide it between the two types of shares. We have the ordinary shares and we have the preference shares. So you have to divide that into the two types of shares. And after dividing the 2,750,000, for example, the share of the ordinary share is 1,750,000 out of the 2,750,000. So that means the preference shares has a share of 1 million. For example, it's just like that. So what will happen next? You just have to divide this with the number of ordinary shares outstanding. So for example, if there are 1 million shares, ordinary shares outstanding, then we will have a book value per share of 1.75. Something like that. And then we have the preference shares. And for example, on the 1 million, there are 500,000 shares, preference shares outstanding. Then we will have book value per preference shares of 2. Okay? However, even if you already know the 3 steps in computing for the book value per share, it's not as easy as that. So again, the 3 steps before we go to this problem. And let's compute the book value per share later on. The first step is to compute the total shareholders' equity because that total shareholders' equity will be the ones that will be subjected to allocation between the two types of, or sometimes there are 3 types of shareholders' equity shares that were issued by the company. So in this problem, we have only 2, ordinary shares and preference shares. Sometimes, there are a lot of types of shares, like for example, ordinary shares, preference shares cumulative, preference shares participating, something like that. Okay? So, for simplicity of discussion, let's limit the types of shares into 2, ordinary shares and preference shares. Okay? So again, first step, compute the total shareholders' equity because that will be subjected to allocation to the types of shares. Second, allocate it to ordinary shares and preference shares. Third step, after the allocation, you divide it with the number of ordinary shares outstanding to get the book value per ordinary share. But if you're gonna get the book value per preference share, you have to divide it on the number of preference shares outstanding. Okay, so those are the 3 steps. Again, it's not easy as that. Why? Because on the very first step, like in this problem, getting the shareholders' equity is not that easy. You still have to adjust something here. So you cannot directly go to allocation of the 2,750,000 between ordinary shares and preference shares. You have to adjust something first. Okay? So what is that something first? So on the step 1, we have sub-step A. Sub-step A. So sub-step A, you have to look for the 3 items. So the 3 items that you have to adjust here are, first, the subscription receivable. So sub-step A, you have to ignore the subscription receivable. So what does it mean? In here, I'm going to assume that you already know the nature of the subscription receivable. So that is usually deducted in the total shareholders' equity. So in computing for the book value per share though, you are to ignore this subscription receivable. So meaning, it shall not be deducted. Okay? So meaning, this will become at 3 million if ever, not 3 million. This is 750, right? So, if we're not going to deduct the 750, this will become 3,500,000. So this is just in the computation of the book value per share. Meaning, subscription receivable, if you are going to be asked, how much is the shareholders' equity? This should not be ignored. This should be deducted. Okay? But since we're talking about book value per share, the first step in order to get the shareholders' equity that you're going to allocate is first, you have to ignore the subscription receivable balance. You will not deduct it. Okay? So that's sub-step number 1. Sub-step number 2 is look for the subscribed share capital. So this is the subscribed share capital. And as you can see, we have ordinary shares here. So we have 50,000 shares here. So the meaning of subscribed share capital is that those share capital are being promised to be paid by some investor. However, they did not yet pay it. That is why it's still here in the subscribed share capital. Because if they have fully paid already this subscribed share capital, guys, this will not become subscribed share capital. It will go here in the ordinary share capital. Okay? So that's the nature of subscribed share capital. Now, what will happen if ever there is a balance on the subscribed share capital? You have to merge this one in the ordinary share capital. It's as if this is not already subscribed. This is already fully paid. So that's the second sub-step. Again, the first sub-step is you have to ignore the subscription receivable. You do not deduct it in getting the shareholders' equity to be allocated. That's first sub-step. Second sub-step, the subscribed share capital should be combined with the ordinary share capital. So what will happen? This 500,000 here, I'm sorry, this 500,000 here will be added here. So this will become erased. And this 50,000 shares, from here there are 100,000 shares. This will not become 100,000 shares already. It will become 150,000. So the original is 100,000. You have to combine the subscribed shares. So it becomes 150,000. And as you can see, 150,000 times 10, it's 1.5. This will become 1.5. So that's the second sub-step. So the first step is actually, there are 3 steps in there. Okay? So the third sub-step is look for the treasury shares. So we have here the treasury shares, or those shares that were originally issued to the shareholders, but you have reacquired them. So those are treasury shares. So I'm going to assume that you know that already. These are reacquired shares. So you have issued it at first, and later on you have reacquired it from your investors at the cost of 25 per share. So that's treasury shares. And usually, The same with subscription receivable, you have to deduct it in order to get the total shareholders equity end. Okay? Now, let's go to the point. What will happen if there are treasury shares? Is it to be ignored like the subscription receivable? Or is it to be combined to the ordinary share capital if ever? Just like the subscribed share capital? The answer is no. So these treasury shares, if there is a balance, you have to retire it or cancel it. Okay? So how do you cancel it? If you can still remember our discussions related to treasury shares, the retirement of treasury shares is just like this. First, you have to close the treasury shares account. Since this has a debit balance, and as you can see, shareholders' equity has a credit balance. So this has a debit balance because it is a deduction on the shareholders' equity. So what will you do if the normal balance of treasury shares is debit? You have to credit it. So we will make an entry on retirement. So credit treasury shares 625. Of course, in accounting, there should be a balance between the debits and the credits. Since we have credits already, what will be debit? Of course, the ordinary share capital. So how many shares are we talking about here? We're talking about 20,000 reacquired shares. So that is also the number of shares that you are going to consider to debit the ordinary share capital. And you have to use the par value. And since this is ordinary shares, and this is the par value of ordinary shares, we're going to use the 10 par value. And if that's the case, 20,000 times 10, we have 200,000. So, the entry is still not balanced. We are lacking on the debit side. So, what are we gonna do? Of course, if it is not yet balanced, you have to find treasury share premium. Treasury share premium and the ordinary share capital share premium original issuance. And since in this particular problem, we don't have any treasury share premium, so it's still not balanced. So we have to resort to getting the ordinary share capital share premium original issuance. So what is the meaning of this? You have to go to the share premium. And as you can see, there is a share premium of 750,000. And we're going to assume that this 750,000 is the share premium for 150,000 shares. Okay? So what are we gonna do? We have to get the share premium per share, which is 750,000 divided by 150,000. So how much is that? Let's calculate it. Wait. 750,000 divided by 150,000. We have 5. So 5 per share. The share premium of the ordinary share capital original issuance is 5 per share. And since that is 5 per share already, we can have here 20,000 shares, the treasury shares, the number of treasury shares, times 5. So, times 20,000. The 5 here times 20,000, that's 100,000. It is still not balanced because the debit is 300,000, whereas the credit is still 625,000. So, what will we do? We have the last resort, debiting it in the retained earnings, and we will have 325,000. So that's the whole entry, okay, on the retirement. Is it necessary to have an entry? Yes, because if you will not have this, you will find it difficult to update the balances because supposedly this treasury share should be erased already. Okay? So, if there is an entry, you have a guide on how are you going to adjust these things. So, for example, on the treasury shares, if we're going to follow this, then the treasury shares will be erased. Of course. You get me? Now, of course, if you're going to erase this, let's take a look at the ordinary share capital. The normal balance of ordinary share capital is supposedly credit. But in here, it was debited. So that means you have to deduct 200,000 from here. This one, you have to deduct. And of course, on the 150,000, you have also to deduct the 20,000 shares. It will become 130,000 shares. And it's really matching the amount here because 130,000 times the par value of 10, we have 1.3. Okay? So we have already effected this on the balances. We have no treasury share premium, but on the ordinary share capital share premium original issuance, we have to debit 100,000. And then the normal balance of ordinary share capital is share premium is normally credit. So since it is debited, we have to deduct 100,000 and we will get 650. Okay? So that's very important. So we have already affected this. We have already, posted this to the balances. And the last one, we have retained earnings. And as you can see, the retained earnings here is 1,075,000. We have to deduct 325,000 from it. Okay? And if we do that, the retained earnings will now be 1,075,000 minus 325,000. And you are going to get 750,000. So this will become 750,000. So, since you have already updated that, you have to total again the shareholders' equity. I guess, I don't know if it's still 2,750. Let's take a look at. So we have 13 plus 650 plus 500 because there's no change with these accounts plus 300,000. The subscribed share capital is already combined with the ordinary share capital. So this is already zero. Subscription receivable is ignored and the treasury shares have already been retired. And this 1,075,000 is no longer 1,075,000, it's already 750. So those encircled, we have to add them all up in order to get the updated total shareholders equity account. So we have 750,000 plus where is it? 300,000 plus 500,000 plus 750. No. Should be 650,000 plus 1.3. So the updated shareholders equity that you are going to allocate to preference shareholders and ordinary shareholders is 3.5 million. But to be sure, let's repeat the process. Let's start with 1.3 million plus 650,000 plus 500,000 plus 300,000 plus 750. And we have 3,500,000. It's confirmed. So that's step 1 in computing the book value per share. Okay? Now, let's go to allocation. So, how do we allocate? First, you have to put here the number of shares and the par value of the preference shares and the ordinary shares. So, we have 130,000 shares with a par value of 10 pesos. How about here? We have 700. Yeah. We have 500,000. So that's 25,000 shares. Let's put it above 25,000 shares with a par value of 20. So is that important? Yes. Okay? So that's very important. Now, the first thing that you should do, you should put here the shareholders equity that should be allocated. So How do we allocate? First, you have to give the ordinary shares and the preference shares their par values. So, that means the par value of the ordinary shares is 1.3. You have to give it to them, the ordinary shareholders. And since the preference shares has also its par value, you have to give it also to the preference shareholders. So you have 500,000. Now here's the twist. Sometimes the preference shares will get more than their par value. Sometimes. And that sometimes is when, in the problem, the preference shares, for example, are given a liquidation value of 1.10 or 110%. So, if that will be the case, you have to multiply this 500,000 times 1.10 for 110%. So, instead of getting only 500,000 here, the preference shareholders will get 550,000 because 10% of 500,000 is 50. So, 550,000. Okay? So, that's the only twist here. The twist wherein the preference shareholders will get more than their par value is when there is a provision on the liquidation value of the preference shares. Okay? Now, since it did not happen in this problem, let's erase it and let's stick to 500,000. Okay? So let's put on the percentage on the preference shares. Because again, preference shares or preference shareholders equity has always a percentage. Okay? Now, what will happen next? So, you have to total 3.5 minus 1.3 minus 500 minus 1.3 minus 500. You have a balance of 1.7 that should be allocated to the ordinary shares and preference shares. Okay? So, what's the next thing that you should do? First, you have to know the characteristic of the preference shares. Is it cumulative or non-cumulative? So, for example, if it is cumulative, and then there are 2 years in arrears of dividends, that means these preference shareholders were not paid dividends for 2 years already. Okay? And if you can still remember, their dividends is computed using this percentage times the par value. So supposedly, they are to get 10% times 500,000, that's 50,000 per year. And since, according to the problem, they have been, their dividends are, what do we call this, in arrears for 2 years already, then you should pay that. You should get the 50,000 per year and give it to the preference shareholders. So, that would be 50,000 times 2 years, and you will get 100,000. So, that 100,000 will be deducted and it will be given to the preference shareholders. So, that's if the preference shareholders are cumulative and they have dividends in arrears. Okay? So, again, that is if the preference shareholders are cumulative. Okay? So, you have to pay the dividends in arrears. So, we have here 50,000 times 2 equals 100,000. That means 1,700,000. Again, you have to give it to the preference shareholders. So, we will now have a problem of 1.6. This problem, I mentioned that this is a problem because this is still unallocated. Okay? So, what if, sir, if you're going to ask, what if, sir, the preference shares are non-cumulative? So, if the preference shares are non-cumulative, sometimes they're gonna get dividends, but for only 1 year. So, even if there are 2 years in arrears of dividends, as you have learned in the past episode, I hope you still remember that if it is non-cumulative, then the preference shareholders are dependent upon the declaration of the board of directors of dividends. Okay? And if there are dividends in arrears, those will not be paid already as long as there is no dividend declaration. But then again, there are times, like for example, if this is non-cumulative, these preference shares are non-cumulative, they're gonna get dividends for 1 year. Especially if it is explicitly stated in the problem that there is dividend declaration. Okay? And even if it's not, even if the problem is silent, okay? Even if it is not said that there is a dividend declaration or there is no dividend declaration, guys, if silent, you are going to assume that there is a dividend declaration and they're gonna get the 50,000, which is the dividends for 1 year. That is if it's non-cumulative. Okay? Now, let's continue the illustration as cumulative. So these preference shares are as if cumulative. So that's what will happen. And we have here the unallocated portion. So what are we gonna do next? Normally, if we have already satisfied the dividends in arrears for cumulative preference shares, the remainder will go directly to the ordinary shares. So 1,3 plus 1,6 already. If the preference shares are non-participating. But there are times that the preference shares are also participating. So aside from being cumulative, they are also participating. So what will happen? They are to share on the 1.6. So let's assume that these preference shares are not only cumulative but also participating. So what will happen? First, as I've told you, if the preference shares are participating, the ordinary shareholders will find it unfair, which is why they're gonna copy the percentage of the preference shares, which is this 10% here. So I have already put that right here because the video was cut off earlier because of the memory of my phone was full. Okay? So I have to tape this again. So I have already put here 10% a while ago. But again, if the preference shares are participating also, the ordinary shares will find it unfair, which is why they're gonna copy the 10%, which is the percentage of the preference shares. And they're gonna get also 1 year of dividends. So how do we get that? So par value of the ordinary shares times the copied percentage, and the ordinary shares will get 130,000. And that will be deducted here in the unallocated portion, and the remainder will be 1,470. So this is the time where the ordinary shares and preference shares will divide this 1,470. Okay? But before we do that, you might ask a question, sir. The preference shares here, which are cumulative, got 2 years worth of dividends, which is 100,000. 50,000 is for 1 year, and 50,000 another for the second year. That's 100,000. This is supposed to be 260,000. Okay? This is supposed to be 260,000 because the preference shares enjoyed 2 years. So supposedly, the ordinary share shall also enjoy dividends for 2 years. It's not. You understand? And you have to remember that because the maximum that the ordinary shares can get if the preference shares are participating is only a dividend for 1 year only. Okay? So you have to remember that. Okay? Now, let's allocate this one. So how do we allocate the 1,470? It's easy. You have to allocate it based on the par values of the shares. So we have here 1,3 plus 1,5. We have 1,8. So I have already written this one because I have already discussed this twice. However, it was not captured by the phone because the memory is full. So we have 1.8. So that means 1,470 times the share of ordinary shares is 1,470 times 1,3 over 1,8, which is this one over this. You can also use 13 over 18, 130 over 180. It's up to you. you will have the same answer. And on the preference share side, you will have 500 over 1/8. So 1,470 times 500 over 1/8. And if we're gonna calculate, we will have 1,470,000 times 1/3 divided by 1/8. You are going to get 1,061,666.67. So we have to round it off, 1,061,667. And of course, on the side of the preference shares, I would like to have a shortcut already. So I will have 1,470 minus 1,061,667, and we're gonna get 408,333. But if you wanted a long cut, you can always have this 1,470,000 times 500 over 1/8. You are going to get the same answer. So that's how you allocate. So that's step 2. However, let's total first the allocation. So we'll start with the ordinary shares. We have 1,3 plus 130,000 plus 1,061,667, and you're gonna get 2,491,667. Again. We have 1,3 plus 130,000 plus 1,061,667. We have 2,491,667. How about here? We have 500 plus 100, 600. So 600,000 plus 408,333. And you're gonna get 1,008,333. So that's step 2. And let's see if ever that is really, the total of these two is really 3.5. Because we are allocating the 3.5. So 1,088,333 plus 2,491,667, we have 3.5. That's confirmed. Okay? So the last step is you have to divide this with the actual outstanding shares. So if we talk about ordinary shares, you can already see that that is 130,000. And as for preference shares, we have 25,000. So 2,491,667 divided by 130,000, and you're gonna get the book value per ordinary share, which is 19.17. How about the preference shares? We have 1,008,333 divided by 25,000, and you're gonna get book value per preference share of 40.33. And that's it for computation of the book value per share, both per ordinary share and per preference share. And again, there are only 3 steps. The first one is you have to get the shareholders' equity that is to be allocated. And then, step 2 is you allocate it in the ordinary shares and the preference shares based on the rules that we have discussed and based on the characteristics of the preference shares. Okay? And after allocation, the step 3 would be to divide it with the actual number of outstanding shares of the ordinary shares and the preference shares. And take note, this is actual number of outstanding shares, not averaged. Unlike the earnings per share, that you have to average the number of ordinary shares and number of preference shares. Although in the earnings per share, that is actually earnings per ordinary share only. Because there is no earnings per preference shares because it's already fixed here. They have already a percentage. So it's useless if you are going to compute for the earnings per preference shares because there is already a percentage. You just have to multiply that with the par value. Okay? So that's it for this video. If you learned, Please click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And see you on my next episode.